Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Unit Lost. I am Stylosa, and let's talk about Overwatch balance, because Jeff has put a big post up on the official forums where he actually speaks about the perception of balance and kind of gives us a few sort of hints and tips of how they approach balance when it comes to the heroes in Overwatch. Now, obviously this is a hugely hot topic right now. You look at what is going on in the game. Look at Roadhog. Have you guys even seen Roadhog since he was nerfed? I haven't. In fact, when I see him, it's such an easy kill. It's like a joke, and I can imagine that the enemy team would go, "Get off the Roadhog!" In fact, I've been on teams where there's been a Roadhog on my team, and people have gone, "Can you? Hello there, good sir. Would you please change from Roadhog? It is not optimal at this moment in time." To which the Roadhog goes, "But I'm a Roadhog main. Okay, I'll play Reinhardt or something, or maybe not Reinhardt, maybe Winston, maybe D.Va. D.Va's probably a better one. I don't know." So that's happening. Also, we've got the Mercy stuff, where Mercy is, well, yeah, in a lot of games for a lot of different complex reasons. So maybe she needs looking at. Loads of different stuff. We had the buffs to McCree, which have made his Deadeye more effective. Reaper, we're seeing him all of the time now because Reaper's got an awesome lifesteal, makes him super effective on certain maps at certain points. He's just a goddamn beast. So, what is going on? What has Jeff said? Well, check this out here, because this is pretty interesting, and well, I've got some counterpoints towards this, so let me just read this off to you guys. The perception of balance is often more powerful than balance itself. All heroes are affected by changes to other heroes. Even if nothing changed, players would adapt to new strategies and tactics that would cause the balance of the game to shift. Even if everything remains exactly the same, there will be new tactics that over time will change. You've only got to look at traditional sports for this. It's very rare that the rules get changed when it comes to a traditional sport. So football or soccer, the rules don't change. Yet there will be different ways of playing the game. There would be, I don't know, focusing more on wing attack, so trying to put crosses into the box or trying to get the balls in behind the defenders. You know, there's loads of different ways you can play it. Different types of team formations that work in different ways against different teams. So it's very complex, yet the rules hardly ever change, and if they do, they're very, very minor. And then Jeff goes on to say this: if you look back to a few months ago, a lot of people were demanding Reinhardt nerfs because he was a must-pick hero in the meta at that time. Winston was literally the least played hero. Fast forward to today, and we're seeing Winston as the dominant tank choice in the tournament scene, along with D.Va, and Reinhardt's playtime has dropped significantly. So I played a ton of Reinhardt up until this season. I hardly play Reinhardt at all now. Why is that the case? Why has Winston seen a massive resurgence from the worst tank to the best tank? Well, Winston actually received massive buffs, ladies and gentlemen. This might come as a shock to you. So this isn't just something that it kind of appears like what Jeff's saying here. Oh yeah, you know, Reinhardt fell off, Winston came back into the game. It's not. Winston received huge buffs. Winston had his headshot hitbox reduced, so it's more difficult to hit him in the headshot. Hit him in the headshot, hit him, whatever. To do critical damage to him, to basically burn him down really quick. It's more difficult. But the biggest change to Winston is that his barrier starts cooldown as soon as you drop the barrier. It never used to do that. You used to drop the barrier and then you had to wait for it to be destroyed, and then the cooldown began. So it meant barriers were very, very long. It took a long time to drop a new barrier down. Now it doesn't. This means Winston can dive in, drop the barrier, do what he's got to do, move to another location, drop the barrier again. He's very, very dynamic. He never used to be like that, so that's a huge buff to Winston. Of course, that means Winston can dive into the back line, and obviously the game then started to get built around Winston, and we often see this where it starts at the highest level, at the pro tournament level. I watch loads of esports, so this means that I'm in a good position to watch this sort of happen, and then I like to talk about it with you guys. So what we were seeing is dive comps with Winston and D.Va were basically all over the place. Winston, D.Va, Genji, Tracer, anybody who was fast who could follow the Winston in, well, they'd build a team around that, because Winston would dive on top of somebody and then just explode them, because all the DPS would come in and they would die, somebody else would die. And what's the best thing you can do in Overwatch? Remove the enemy team. Well, what about Reinhardt? Well, Reinhardt had a nerf, and actually it was a quite substantial nerf to his Earth Shatter. Now, Earth Shatter used to travel up walls, it used to travel over the payload, crucially, and I know this because I played loads and loads and loads of Reinhardt. You could Earth Shatter the payload, and if people were standing on the payload or around the payload, they get Earth Shattered, then you could wipe them out. It was quite powerful. You could argue it was broken. It's called Earth Shatter. Shouldn't be riding up things. That's a bit crazy, right? So they've actually fixed that, or have they kind of nerfed Reinhardt? Well, yeah, they kind of have in a way, but through Winston being buffed, what happens is players, and I've always thought Winston is a very dangerous hero to buff because he is very, like, if you make him a little bit too more powerful, then suddenly the game's built around Winston, which is what we've got now, really. Anyway, Reinhardt, another problem he's got is he's not very good against dive comp. So if somebody dives into your backline really fast and wants to start exploding damage onto your Ana or something like that, well, Reinhardt can't stop them. Do you know who can stop them though? D.Va with Defense Matrix can stop them. And a Winston diving in, dropping his bubble around that target can stop them. Proper 360 protection. That's why you see the best counter to dive is often to counter dive them, to use defensive dive. When I see Reinhardt in a game now, it's like I feel sorry for him. It's oh, poor Reinhardt. But think about Reinhardt, guys. The game, and I said this, and actually, Horizon Lunar Colony is probably the only map which isn't designed around Reinhardt, which sounds a bit strange, but let me explain this. So, all of the other maps have got very distinct choke points that Reinhardt can basically block with his barrier, right? There is a point where his barrier is just big enough to block the path as he's moving around. You know, think of all the 2CP maps apart from Horizon Lunar Colony. Think of all the other maps. There's loads of points where Reinhardt is super effective. Look at Hollywood, first point. Reinhardt, yeah, he's great. And even on the second point and the final point as well. He was great everywhere because he gives that beautiful defensive barrier that you can walk forward with and your team can operate from behind. The problem is, as soon as you allow a tank and other fast-moving targets to just go past that barrier, it takes Reinhardt out of the game. So what happens is, Reinhardt stops being played. And that is directly because of buffs to Winston. If we didn't have those buffs to Winston, then we wouldn't see Reinhardt usage fall off and Winston become extremely dominant. So what Jeff says here is a little bit strange. It's not exactly like this has just happened, like, oh yeah, the game has suddenly changed. There was a large buff to Winston which caused all of this stuff. Anyway, Jeff goes on to say some more stuff. So he touches on the Earth Shatter issue. He says, short of the adjustment to Earth Shatter, not intended as a huge balance nerf, but rather more of a that doesn't seem right fix, we did not touch Reinhardt's balance, but changes to other heroes and changes to the accepted strategy of how the game should be played at a meta level has changed, which tanks are perceived to be right or wrong to play. So obviously I've just covered that with Winston being very dominant. Winston and D.Va are basically your go-to tanks. In fact, a lot of the time you'll see just a solo tank Winston, but it'll be Winston and D.Va. You don't really see Zarya that much. You don't really see Roadhog anymore. Reinhardt, you don't really see him. So those are the two very strong tanks right now, Winston and D.Va. You can make a similar argument about Zenyatta's increased playtime. Zen's new prevalence is due to adjustments to other heroes, not Zen himself, as well as a shifting meta. Now this is very interesting, right? Because why is Zen powerful? Because Zen is a dive comp support. That's what he is, right? So if the team are based around very fast moving targets that are going to be difficult for Ana to heal, that are going to be difficult for Mercy to keep up with, or Lucio to heal, you take Zen, right? You put the orb on Winston, the orb of harmony. That's going to heal him. That's going to make him more durable. You could put that on your Tracer. You could put that on your Genji. And this is pretty much an accepted comp to have Winston, Tracer, Genji in a team, and then you'd have D.Va, and then you'd have Zen, and then you'd have Lucio. That would be a very strong meta team right now. Very, very strong. You could change D.Va for a Soldier 76 if you wanted to as well. Very strong. But that's why Zen is powerful as well, because Zen adds to the DPS. Boombox, who plays for the UK World Cup team, is the best Zenyatta in the world. I remember watching him play the first time, and I was amazed. We were sitting there in scrims, and so the scrim is just like a training match, just to see if the players were good enough. And he was better than the DPS. I was like, what is going on? This guy was popping headshots. He was supporting his team. He was healing. It was awesome. But it showed to me in that moment the power of Zen. Yes, he is the dive tank healer. Yes, he can provide healing when, I mean, he still needs line of sight for a few seconds, like, because if you got the orb on you, then you go out of line of sight, then eventually it will pop off your head and come back to Zen. But it means he can heal you if he can see you, basically, right? And it means that if you're moving fast, then you can go away and do whatever you like. I watched the Zenyatta player just put the healing out, put the Discord out, and then focus on damage, and he becomes another DPS. It's super powerful. So that's why Zen is in the meta right now. And then he goes on to talk about Tracer's balance. Beyond the obvious tuning knobs that we have, it's greatly affected by the balance of other heroes, as well as the perception of how good she is at any one time. Now, Tracer has never been changed since the game has gone live. Tracer is Tracer, but why is Tracer powerful? It's just because of dive comp, right? Tracer can get in there and do damage, but also, there isn't really any good counters to Tracer. There is McCree, who I would say is the primary counter to Tracer. There was Roadhog, although Roadhog had a very strange relationship with Tracer, because Roadhog, when I was playing Tracer and I seen a Roadhog, I loved it, right? I'd try and bait out the hook, because If Roadhog uses the hook, then it's very unlikely that he's going to kill you. He still can. He can still get that clutch right click or left click that just explodes your head and kills you instantly. But it's very unlikely that he will. And then you can go to work on him. He's got 600 health. You can get massive ultimate charge. You can pretty much get a pulse bomb through killing one Roadhog if you're playing Tracer. So powerful. So he's not really a very good counter. But McCree is. The thing with McCree is, though, McCree is the most diveable DPS in the game. So what I mean by that is, he can't get away. So against a dive comp, Tracer, McCree just dies because he can't move around fast enough. And if they all dive on top of him, which generally they would because he's very easy to kill, he just dies and then there is no counter to Tracer. So that's how Tracer is still or is perceived to be more powerful right now. But Tracer is a powerful hero, don't get me wrong. Tracer is a very high skill cap hero. I covered this in a video I made the other week where I spoke about she's the best DPS in the game, and she is right now. Because as players get better with Tracer, as teams work better with Tracer, she becomes more dominant, and that is kind of the mark of a good hero. You know, she's fun to play, she gets better over time as the players get better, but maybe we'll get to a point where something will have to happen to Tracer. I don't know, we're going to have to see. And then Jeff wraps it up with this. It's always fun to study how people innovate to break a meta. In the NHL, which I think is the hockey, isn't it? National Hockey League. In the 90s, team developed an overly defensive strategy, think 3-tank meta, called the Trap, which was later evolved to the left-wing lock. Teams like New Jersey and Detroit won the championships using these methods. Eventually, the NHL had to make rule changes to change the meta. There was also an example of a contestant on Jeopardy playing the game differently that caused the meta to break. And then he links to that and he says fun stuff. So there you go, guys. That is this is what it's like to balance Overwatch. It's very difficult. The good thing that we've got here, being fans of this game, is Jeff and the team, a lot of them come from World of Warcraft. That is a game where balance is not taken lightly. There have been some issues. There's always going to be issues with balance. The community is always going to get outraged when things change and all of that stuff. But they have been in the most hardcore environment for balance in a game ever. And now they're working on Overwatch. And their philosophy for Overwatch is not to make massive sweeping changes. It's to make minor changes. And they've learned from mistakes that they've made. Think about Bastion in Season 4. Yes, Bastion was absolutely insane at the start of that season because I think was it Season 4 or Season 3? I think it was Season 4. Because he had 35% reduced damage when he was in sentry mode. So when he turned into the turret, he took 35% less damage. Also, he turned into the turret much quicker. So this meant that Bastion was crazily OP. I played him for all of my placement games in that season just to prove it, and it was stupid. At one point, I got blasted with a Pharah ultimate. I think it was on Lijiang Garden. Yeah, Pharah was ulting me point blank, and I was shooting somebody else. I killed them. I then turned around and casually killed the Pharah. As she was ulting me, she should have annihilated me, but she didn't. I killed both of them. It was stupid. So they've learned from mistakes they've made in the past, hopefully. So what they do now is minor changes. Like if you look at the changes to Reaper, to McCree, and even to Roadhog, they're fairly minor, although the Roadhog one, even though it's minor, is still pretty major. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been Stylosa, and this is Unit Lost. Let me know what you think about balance when it comes to Overwatch. Let me know if you think they've made any major mistakes, especially with the recent changes. Also, let me know if you think things need changing. But remember, it is a very complex thing, this is. It isn't just about, oh, Tracer's dominant, let's change her, because that might make somebody else crazy powerful. And they've got to think, you know, there's a load of heroes in Overwatch, more heroes coming as well. So it's a very, very complex. It's super interesting. Again, this is something I could talk about for hours on end. I love this. I should probably bring back my Overwatch podcast so I can just sit there and just talk forever and ever about Overwatch. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I am Stylosa. This is Unit Lost. If you enjoyed the video, then like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can follow me on Twitter, which is @UnitLostGaming, and join the Discord, which is discord.gg/UnitLost. And I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Toodaloo.